Welcome back to Merlin's Corner, haven for inanity and pointless speculation. Hopefully it's at least entertaining. Today I want to muse upon the remaining character names in the first chapter. I touched upon this a bit in the previous Merlin's Corner, but I want to dive a bit more deeper and detailed. First up, huge shout out to Mushu Report, who both manages a wiki for Lorcana and also put together a Google sheet that I will be using extensively for this video. Each ink color gets 34 cards, and they are ordered alphabetically with actions and items after characters. As you can see, we have some gaps in the collection numbers. First, let's try to slot on the characters that we know will be included. In Amethyst, we know there is an evil queen from Snow White, and we also know there is a card called the Queen Wicked and Vain. Whether or not this art and this name are for the same card is unknown, but for now let's just assume it is. Likely she will be 56 given how close in the alphabet she is to the wardrobe. In Emerald, we've seen the card for Lady Tremaine, Wicked Stepmother, but her collection number has not been revealed. We also have art for an Emerald Cusco, and both of them will be somewhere between Jumba and Mickey. For Ruby, we lack collection numbers for Goofy, Tigger, and Sergeant Tibbs, and we also know there will be a Pongo somewhere. In Sapphire, there's an Ariel, and she has to be collection number 137, as is noted in the spreadsheet. We also know there's a Merlin, who, judging by his art, is also Sapphire. Finally, in Steel, we don't know Cerberus's collection number, we have an art for Lilo, and we also know there is another Steel Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy. There are also 3 names that we don't know the ink color for: Elsa Queen Regent, Elsa Spirit of Winter, and Stitch Carefree Surfer. For the latter 2 we have art, and it's pretty clear to me that Spirit of Winter is Amethyst, and I would guess that Surfer is Amber, judging by the big yellow sunlight glow behind him. For the rest, I put together a list of likely characters from all the franchises that have been included so far so we can look at the gaps and see which characters alphabetically could fit there. I also think we're guaranteed to get at least 2 cards for each princess. Right now there are 2 for Ariel, 3 for Aurora, 1 for Belle, 1 for Jasmine, 1 for Moana, and 1 for Mulan. We're missing Snow White, Cinderella, Tiana, and Rapunzel. She's technically not a princess, but I would also expect an Anna or 2. To me, Snow White is clearly Amber, so I would put both of her cards there. There's also almost nothing between her and Stitch alphabetically, so she'd slot in right ahead of Carefree Surfer. Cinderella, I think, straddles Amber and Sapphire, so I'll put one of her in each. A second Belle would also be Sapphire, so Cinderella should follow her. Tiana, I think, would be Amber and Emerald, but there's no room for her in Amber, so we'll put 2 of her in Emerald. We've seen Tangled cards in Amber, Amethyst, and Steel, so I'll throw Rapunzel a bone and put one of her in each of those colors. For Jasmine, I'm going to put her second in Emerald because there's not a lot of room between Iago and Jumba there. If there were room for Mulan and Steel, I'd put one there, but there isn't, so I'll guess her second is also in Ruby. Finally, I'll guess that the other Moana is Sapphire. The princess villains are also likely. Maleficent has 4 cards already, so we'll ignore her. The Queen, Lady Tremaine, Jafar, and Dr. Facilier each have 1 card so far. We're missing Ursula, Gaston, Shan Yu, Mother Gothel, Hans, and Tamatoa. There's a certain temptation to put every villain in Emerald, but I'm going to put Ursula in Sapphire. There's no room for Gaston in Steel, and the LeFou that calls him out is Amber, so we'll put him in there. Shan Yu is likely Ruby. Mother Gothel is definitely Emerald though, as is probably Hans. Tamatoa I will put in Sapphire for now, as Sapphire has had some item synergy, and he definitely will. Now we come to pure guesswork with the remaining gaps. We'll look at what alphabetically is possible between the characters we know, or have just extrapolated. In Amber, there are 2 between LeFou and Maximus, and I think the likeliest candidates are Lilo and Lumiere. We then have 3 more between Moana and the Snow Whites, and there are a lot of options there. I'm going to guess Mrs. Potts, Simba, and Smee. For Amethyst, there's something before Archimedes, and it is most likely in Anna. After the owl, there are a lot more options, but I'm going to go with Daisy Duck. Between Dr. Facilier and Elsa, there are very few options, so I'm going to guess we get another Dr. Facilier, and that Queen Regent is also Amethyst. Between Elsa and Jafar, I'm going to guess Hermes and another genie. After Jafar, this has to be Madame Mim. Between the Maleficents and Mickey, I'll wager we get Merryweather. Finally, there are 2 gaps between the wardrobe and Yzma, which I think will be Wendy and an Ursula. Next to Emerald. Between Cruella and Genie, let's go with Fauna and Flynn Rider. After Genie, I'll say Grammatala, Grimsby, and Horace. To complete the henchman set, we'll have Jasper after Iago. Between Jumba and Mickey, there are 5 empty slots, but we know 2 of them are Cusco and Lady Tremaine. Mad Hatter and March Hare have to be in here, so I'll say the final spot is Shape-Shifting Trickster Maui. To round out Emerald, the likeliest candidate is Peter Pan. The ruby slot before Aladdin has to be a boo. There are then 3 openings. I'll go with Anastasia and Drizella and Cobra Bubbles. There's a lot of space between Donald and Maleficent Monsters Dragon, but we do know one of them is Goofy Daredevil. For the others, I'll go with Kronk, another Gaston, and Flora. Between Maleficent and Mickey, let's go with Marshmallow, who's already depicted on Smash. After Mickey, it has to be Mufasa. Between Mulan and Scar, we have 3 spots, one of which is Pongo. Of the other 2, I think one has to be Queen of Hearts. So for the other, let's go with Mushu. For Sapphire, I think right before Flounder will be Cogsworth, and after him I think we'll see Friar Tuck and a Hades. After Jasmine, let's go with Maid Marian, and after Maleficent, the only real option here is Mama Odie. The last Sapphire slot I think will be Perdita. For Steel, there isn't room for Alice anywhere except right before Beast Hardheaded, so let's put her there. Between Captain's Hook and Gantu, there are 2 openings, which we'll give to Carpet and Donald Duck Musketeer. The next gap is probably a second Hercules. Between Kristoff and Mickey, I'll wager it's Little John and Megara. Our last gap between Simba and the Tinker's Bell, I'll say are probably 2 more Simbas and a Sven. I won't even try to guess action or item names, but I think at least some of these characters will turn out to be correct. Comment below what your predictions are for characters in the first chapter, or tell me how wrong I am, particularly if you're watching this in the future when we know what all the cards are.